We'll call tonight's council meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Council members Jamison,
Here.
Knutson, Litz,
Here.
Staggers,
Present.
Anderson,
Here.
Benega,
Here.
Brown,
Here.
Costello.
Here. We have a quorum present for tonight's meeting. Tonight will be led in the invocation by Pastor Wade Mobley from Living Word Free Lutheran Church here in Sioux Falls. After the invocation, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance, so I'd ask everyone to please rise.
Being budget night, I'd like to read 2 Corinthians 9:8. God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that always having all sufficiency in everything, you may have an abundance for every good deed. Father God, we thank you for tonight. We thank you for this time together. We thank you, Lord, for each of the council members who are here and dedicating their time to the good of our city. We thank you for each one in attendance tonight as well. And we pray, Father God, that you would be glorified tonight and that our actions would be such that they bring you glory. We pray, Lord, not that you would bless what we do, but that we would do what you can bless. And I thank you for the wisdom that you will give to each of the council members tonight. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We have a proclamation night for childhood cancer awareness, and Roger Hochstad and Jack Davick is here, and then Janice Flint. They're all from the Sioux Falls Morning Optimist Club here in Sioux Falls. So we invite you and thank you for coming. How are you? Good. Okay, we have a proclamation that reads, whereas the American Cancer Fund for Children and Kids Cancer Connection report cancer is a leading cause of death by disease among children in the United States. This strategic disease is detected in more than 20,000 of our nation's young people each and every year. Whereas the founding more than 15 years ago by Stephen A. Firestein, a descendant of cosmetic magnate Max Factor, the American Cancer Fund for Children, Inc., and sister organization Kids Cancer Connection, Inc., are dedicated to helping these children and their families. Whereas the American Cancer Fund for Children and Kids Cancer Connection provide a variety of vital patient psychosocial services and hospital activities to children undergoing cancer treatment at Sanford Children's Hospital and USD Medical School, Department of Pediatrics, Division of Hematology, Oncology in Sioux Falls, as well as participating hospitals throughout the country, thereby enhancing the quality of life for these children and their families. Whereas through its uniquely sensitive and comforting Magical Caps for Children program, the American Cancer Fund for Children and Kids Cancer Connection distributes thousands of beautiful handmade caps and decorated baseball caps to children who want to protect their heads following the trauma of chemotherapy, bone marrow transplants, surgery, and/or radiation treatments. Whereas the American Cancer Fund for Children and Kids Cancer Connection also sponsor nationwide Courageous Kid Recognition Award ceremonies and hospital celebrations in honor of a child's determination and bravery to fight the battle against childhood cancer. Now, therefore, I, Dave Munson, Mayor of the City of Sioux Falls, do hereby proclaim September 2009 as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month in Sioux Falls. Okay, we'll start with the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
I so move. Knutson.
Knutson moves. Is there a second?
Second, Jameson.
Jamison seconds. Further comments? Further motions? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the consent agenda, vote aye. Those opposed, no.
Councilmembers Jameson?
Yes.
Knutson? Yes. Litz?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Benega?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Costello?
Yes.
All members present have voted. The consent agenda has been approved 8-0. Is there a motion to approve the regular agenda?
So moved, Benninger.
Benega moves. Is there a second?
Second, Litz.
Litz seconded. Further motions for the regular agenda? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the regular agenda, vote yes. Those opposed, no.
Councilmembers Jameson?
Yes.
Knutson? Yes. Litz?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Benega?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Costello?
Yes.
All members present have voted. The regular agenda has been approved 8-0. This is the time we set aside a period for 5 minutes for anyone that wishes to address the council during public input, and we just ask that they give their name. And that's, so if anyone wishes to address the council for 5 minutes, we ask them to come forward at this time. Seeing no one that's coming forward, we will move into the regular agenda. And item number 4.
Special one-day liquor license for Hy-Vee Inc., all locations by Hy-Vee to be operated at the Delbridge Museum of Natural History, 805 South Kiwanis Avenue on September 17, 2009, for a wine tasting fundraiser.
Hi, Lori Hogstead with the City Attorney's Office. I can answer any questions on item 4.
Any questions of Lori on item number 4? Others that wish to address the council on item number 4? Is there a motion by the council?
Move for approval, Benninger.
Benninger moves. Is there a second?
Second, Jameson.
Jamison seconds. Further comments on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion to approve item number 4, vote yes. Those opposed, no.
Councilmembers Jameson?
Yes.
Knutson? Yes. Litz?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Benega?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Costello?
Yes.
All members present have voted. Item number 4 has been approved 8-0. Item number 5.
A resolution adopting the budget for the fiscal year ending December 31, 2010, and the 2010 to 2014 capital program.
Gene Roanhorse, Director of Finance. This is a resolution that by charter the council is will be adopting tonight, and the actual appropriation of funds will be done next week. We have a total suggested budget by the mayor of $337 million, and that does not include any of the capital expenditures. The capital program is $472 million. And we've gone through a lot of this with you in various hearings and that, and I'd answer any questions if we have any at this point.
Questions of Gene on item number 5? Is there others that wish to address the council on item number 5? Is there any motions?
Move to approve.
Move to approve.
Second.
Costello, seconded by Jamison. Motion has been made and seconded to approve. Further motions?
Mr. Mayor, I have a number of amendments to present this evening. What I'd like to do, and we've agreed on this at the informational, to present the amendments in the order that was given to us by the city clerk's office. And because of that, it might be a little bit confusing because we're going to be going back and forth dealing with some different issues with amendments. If I could just briefly mention that I'll have amendments to provide funding for worthwhile projects. I'll also have amendments to delay the implementation of some projects because of the downturn in the economy. And thirdly, I'll have some amendments to delete spending and some programs. And finally, I'll have an amendment for a property tax, no property tax increase. So having said that, I'm going to go ahead and begin with the First Amendment, which it deals with other capital equipment project Amendment A. I move the 2010 OSEP budget by deleting $17,200 from fleet for a pickup and amend the 2010 OSEP budget by adding $17,200 to fleet for the purchase of snow gates.
That's your motion?
Yes, that's
Is there a second to that motion? That motion dies for lack of a second. Next.
Now, the next category of amendments will deal with the capital improvement plan, the CIP. The first amendment dealing with the CIP, capital improvement program, is I move to amend capital improvement plan by adding $500,000 to engineering for a joint city/county archive building in 2014.
That's your motion. Is there a second to that motion?
Second, Anderson.
Anderson seconds. Go ahead.
Yes, I would encourage my colleagues on the City Council to support this project, which we would be putting in the CIP in 2014. We would have many years to talk about this project. I think it's fair to say right now this is a very worthwhile project because right now the city does not have any centralized archive, and so we have important documents, and I emphasize important documents, scattered throughout the city. And in cooperation with the county, we could build an archive which would also store archives from the county, also store materials from the museum, and also store materials from our court system.
Further comments on the motion to amend?
Well, I would just like to say, as far as this Collections and Research Center project is concerned, I too am very supportive of this project. Again, I realize with the economy being like it is and the and so forth, that it's probably more of a symbolic gesture at this part, at least on my part, as far as my comments, because obviously the next mayor can easily and will, I'm sure, determine her or his own CIP plan. But again, I would like to remind my colleagues that the collections by the Siouxland Heritage Museums, half of those collections belong to the City of Sioux Falls. So I do believe that we have a responsibility to care for our own collections. And again, that was all set up in 1974 by the Joint Powers Agreement, and then updated in 97 and 98. And actually, there's going to be a little bit of a dangerous problem right now at the Old Courthouse Museum because of the heaviness of the collections that are being stored upstairs. So anyway, I would just like to say that I am supportive of this project also.
Others that wish to address the council on the archives for the joint city-county building? Others that comments? We've got the motion been made and seconded to approve the proposed amendment for $500,000. Further questions, comments? Not all in favor of the motion will vote yes. Those opposed will vote no.
Council members Jamison?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Litz?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Benega?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Costello?
Yes.
That motion has been approved 8-0. Next motion?
Yes, the next amendment I have is also with the capital improvement program. I move to amend the capital improvement plan project number 010064 Falls Park Development by deleting $77,000 for removable railings.
Is there a second?
Second, Anderson.
Anderson seconds. Go ahead.
Yeah, the reason I would like for my colleagues to consider this amendment is because right now we do have railings at Falls Park, for safety purposes. However, they are not movable. And we do have the Parks Department saying, well, we need to have these removable railings so we can paint the railings because of all the mist and water associated with the falls interfering with the painting. However, I guess I would say that we could save $77,000 by simply covering the railings in a tent apparatus and paint them without having to spend this $77,000 needlessly.
Questions? Don, do you want to respond to that?
Don Kearney with Parks and Recreation. The plan is to be able to remove a set of railings so that when we actually can take them inside to a body shop to be able to have them sandblasted and then painted. In the meantime, the other set of railings is for us to be able to keep the fall safe and the railings in place so that there isn't a safety issue there during that same time frame. So The practicality of tinting or heating those railings, maybe an option. Our staff is recommending the option in front of you.
But these are on the east side of the park where the falls comes down, and it's that round area,
and
that
please-
they really are in bad shape. I was just down there yesterday, and
And please know that we've tried to paint them on site and tried to deal with it that way, but with the constant mist coming onto those railings, it's hard and it really doesn't stick very well. And the other aspect of it is that when the mist isn't dropping onto the railings all the time, it's too cold to paint. And so that's our challenge.
So if I could just clarify, Don, you've never tried to paint these by having a tent covering it so that we wouldn't have to worry about spending the $77,000?
We have not.
Thank you.
other comments on the motion to delete the removal railings? Not? All in favor of the motion?
Was there a second?
Yeah, Anderson, second.
Sorry.
So all in favor of the motion will vote yes, those opposed, no.
Councilmembers Jamison,
No.
Knutson,
No.
Litz,
No.
Staggers,
Yes.
Anderson,
No.
Benega,
No.
Brown,
No.
Costello.
No.
That motion failed, 1 yes and 7 noes. Next.
The next amendment I have, once again, deals with the CIP. I move to amend capital improvement plan project number 190064, parkland acquisition, by deleting $200,000 in 2010 for parkland acquisition.
Second. That dies for lack of a second. Next.
The next CIP amendment I have is I move to amend capital improvement plan project number 107064, Arboretum and East Sioux Falls Park development, by starting the 3-year development project in 2011.
Second. That dies for lack of a second. Next.
Once again, the CIP, I move to amend capital improvement plan project number 011064, Terrace Park development, by deleting $902,100 for a new concessions building.
Second. That dies for lack of a second. Next.
The next amendment I have for the CIP is I move to amend capital improvement plan project number 198064, play court cyclic reconstruction, by starting the play court cyclic reconstruction project in 2011 rather than 2010.
Second. That dies for lack of a second. Next.
The next one is a CIP amendment. I move to amend capital improvement plan project number 030064, development of play structures, by starting the systematic replacement of play structures project in 2011 rather than 2010.
Second. That dies for lack of a second. Next.
The next CIP amendment I have is I move to amend capital improvement plan project number 199064, Prairie Green Golf Course improvements, by deleting $1,720,100 for a new clubhouse at Prairie Green Golf Course.
Second.
I'll second this for discussion.
Okay.
Yes. The reason I'm offering this amendment is there's already a clubhouse at Prairie Green Golf Course. The argument is that there should be a bigger golf course, a bigger clubhouse, and I don't object to that, but I certainly do object to people who do not play golf paying for a new clubhouse for people who do play golf. In the past, we've been told about 15% of the citizens of Sioux Falls play golf, and then we'll have the rest, the 85%, paying for this, and they'll never be using it. So it's not fair that we have the overwhelming majority of the citizens of Sioux Falls paying for something they'll never use.
Maybe Don can answer this, but I believe the golf courses actually make money for the city.
Do you want to address it, Don?
Yes, that's correct. The city generally gets anywhere from $250,000 to $275,000 every year from the operation of the golf courses.
Further questions? Go ahead.
Well, and I don't have a question for the director, but I mean, I guess I would just like to say as a city councilor myself, I just try very hard to balance all the quality of life projects that are out there because I myself don't golf either, but I don't play football and I don't play soccer. And actually, I've never played any hockey either, but I'm still extremely supportive of us continuing to keep up all of our facilities at the appropriate level.
Go ahead.
Yeah, if I could ask a question of Don.
Go ahead.
Don, you might just stay close.
That's what everybody's telling me.
Don, this $1,720,100 for this new clubhouse, is any of that money being coming from the money that the golf course earns each year?
It is not going into the sales tax fund, no. It's not going in the same fund.
Right, so in other words...
It comes to the city, though.
In other words, this is being paid by tax money?
That's correct.
100%?
That's correct.
Pat?
Don, I had an opportunity to play out at Elmwood the other day with my son, and it was a great experience for both of us. It reminded me of the times when I used to go on the East Nine and practice, and I think I took some lessons from somebody out in the audience there. How do the rounds of play compare to Elmwood and Prairie Green? The number of rounds?
The rounds are significantly more at Elmwood, but there are quite a number at Prairie Green, and I don't know those off the top of my head, but I know Tom is in the audience tonight, our Dakota Golf president. He'd definitely be able to answer those.
I'd be curious about that, and then also about, because I don't play golf very often, and I hadn't played in a long time, and the clubhouse out at Elmwood was not the clubhouse that I remember playing at. How long has that been there?
That'd be another good question
Okay.
for Tom.
Kenny, do you have something you want to ask of Don?
Yeah, Don, I guess I want to know the $250,000 a year that these golf courses are making. Where does this money go?
It goes into the city's general fund as
Just into
revenue.
the general fund?
Yeah.
And there's no way of basically setting some of that money aside, maybe in a program to replace some of these buildings as they grow older?
You know, we've talked about that for the last couple of years on and off, about the best way to do that. The challenge there is that if you don't run the revenue through the general fund, then there needs to be a corresponding decrease in expenses of $250,000 as well. And much like our city parks, the golf courses are under the purview of the Parks and Recreation Department. And, you know, it's just a philosophical issue, really. We've talked to finance extensively about it, about what their preference was, and I just don't know that anybody has really a big concern from our perspective, as administration's perspective, about how that gets done, because it's just really a matter of where you're putting the money from our perspective.
Tom, do you want to address the question that Councilor Costello had?
Tom Jansen, Dakota Golf. Your question was relationship of rounds at the golf courses?
Yes.
Elmwood has 27 holes. If you take away the East Nine, which is kind of its own separate little animal, Elmwood does about 10 or 15% more rounds than Prairie Green.
Okay, so then the clubhouse, when was the clubhouse that's at Elmwood? How old is that?
The clubhouse, the main structure of the clubhouse was 1966, and then we remodeled and added on that new section in 2000.
2000, okay. And then how does that compare to what you envisioned for this in Prairie Green?
Well, size-wise, pretty similar for the most part. I mean, Elmwood's clubhouse is 6,000 square feet, and I think that's the plan for the Prairie Green facility.
Thank you.
Yeah. Further questions, Tom?
One more, I guess. Tom, when was that clubhouse constructed for Prairie Green?
We opened for play in 1995.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Further questions on the proposed amendments made and seconded? Not? Go ahead.
If I could just add another comment here. So we're talking about replacing a 14-year-old clubhouse. with, the taxpayers of Sioux Falls paying for this. I don't object to the people that use these golf courses paying for this clubhouse, but that's not the way it is. And hopefully, maybe in the future, we could approve this amendment and try to make sure that the money that is spent by the golfers actually pay for their clubhouse.
A motion been made and seconded to amend the Prairie Green Golf Course. All in favor of the proposal to amend will vote yes. Those opposed will vote no.
Councilmembers Jameson,
No.
Knutson,
No.
Litz,
No.
Staggers,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Benega,
No.
Brown,
No.
Costello.
No.
2 yes and 6 no. That motion failed. Next.
The next amendment I have is for the CIP, also deals with another clubhouse. I move to amend capital improvement plan project number 200064, Kuhn Park Golf Course Clubhouse replacement by deleting $218,100 for replacing clubhouse at Kuhn Park Golf Course.
Second. That dies for a lack of a second. Next.
The next one is a CIP amendment. I move to amend capital improvement plan project number 128064, maintenance headquarters improvements by starting the project in 2011 rather than 2010.
Is there a second? Dies for a lack of a second. Next.
The next one is another CIP amendment. I move to amend capital improvement plan project number 164064, Greenway fishing access by deleting $100,000 for Greenway fishing access.
Is there a second?
Second, Anderson.
Go ahead.
In the past, we've also had this amendment before the City Council. There are various monies being used here for this $100,000 Greenway fishing access, but I guess I'm wondering, really should we be spending this amount of money just to provide some fishing access when all you have to do is just get onto the bank on the Big Sioux River and throw your line in?
Question, Don, you want to address that?
Yeah, a number of years ago, there was a river recreation enhancement plan put together in cooperation with Game Fish and Parks. The issue is not so much about being able to throw your line in the river. It's more about getting access down to the river with parking, with support facilities for people that do fish. And as you've mentioned, Councilmember Staggers, there are significant federal dollars available to help make these improvements in cooperation with the city. It's a 75-25 match, with the federal share being 75%. And I just note that as more and more people continue to live in Sioux Falls, more and more fishermen come down to the river to fish. And generally we're seeing pretty good feedback from the fishing public that they'd like to see some enhanced improvements. They're pretty low-dollar, primitive-type improvements, similar to what you would see at a state park. And with our population base here in the state of South Dakota, largely being in Sioux Falls, Game Fish and Parks has been very supportive of encouraging us to work with them. And it not only provides fishing access, but also access for other types of recreation.
Questions? Go ahead.
Don, is it handicapped accessible?
Yes, everything we do would have to be handicap accessible.
I just got to add, this is a great project for people to enjoy the river in Sioux Falls. This is something we should not delete, and I would encourage Councilor Staggers to change his mind.
Go ahead.
Yes, I do have a question here for Don. What do we get for $100,000?
It's primarily parking, maybe some fishing docks that people could use, and it could also include some primitive restrooms as well.
Do you know how many people, this is maybe a almost impossible question to answer, but do you have any idea how many people in Sioux Falls regularly go to the Big Sioux River fishing?
No idea.
Okay.
Don, would these access spots also be accessible for like canoeing, kayaking, which seems to be getting larger and larger here in the city?
Absolutely.
Have we had any preliminary spots where we're looking at this time?
Yeah, the area that we're currently looking at is up about near the diversion dam. Now, a lot of people fish off that bridge and underneath that bridge at that location, and that is an area where they're pulling off to the side of the road, finding a farmer's driveway to have access to, crossing back and forth between the highway and the other side of the river where they want to fish. And so it's just an area that we have a lot of traffic there now, and we just like to enhance what's there. And I think the fishermen feel a little left out once in a while.
Thank you.
Well, I would like to ask everyone to support this. Frankly, there's very few places in this community where handicap accessible people are able to fish. This is one of those places that's going to enhance the quality of life of that particular group, and I would hate to discriminate against them because of the qualities that we give to everyone else in this community, and I believe this is extremely important to the people that we serve in this organization or in this community and the organizations that support fishing. So please support this.
Further comments?
In addition to what Gerald said, some families may need that option even for catching their own food at times.
Further comments? Call motion for us to delete the $100,000 for the Greenway fishing access. All in favor of that deletion will vote yes. Those opposed will vote no.
Councilmembers Jamison?
No.
Knutson?
No.
Litz?
No.
Staggers?
Yes.
Anderson?
No.
Benega?
No.
Brown?
No.
Costello?
No.
That motion fails, 1 yes and 7 no. Next motion?
The next amendment is a CIP amendment. I move to amend capital improvement plan project number 079064, Arrowhead Park, by moving the funds of $354,288 for Arrowhead Park from 2010 to 2011.
Is there a second? That dies for lack of a second. Next.
The next one is a CIP amendment. I move to amend capital improvement plan project number 121064, Pioneer Park improvements, by deleting $145,000 for restrooms at Pioneer Park.
Second. That dies for lack of a second. Next.
The next one is also a CIP amendment. I move to amend capital improvement plan project number 217064, refrigerated outdoor ice system, by deleting $829,600 for a refrigerated outdoor ice system.
Is there a second?
Second, Anderson, for
Second, go ahead.
Well, in this one here, we want to kind of take over where Mother Nature leaves off sometimes. During the wintertime, it gets really cold here in Sioux Falls, and the ice readily freezes on the various ice rinks that we have in Sioux Falls. But sometimes we do have warm days, and the ice does melt a little bit. This is just part of nature, but we want to counter Mother Nature by having this expensive refrigerated outdoor ice system to make sure that on some warm days the ice doesn't melt.
Well, I continue to believe in the climate we live in, that it's very good when adults and children will go outside in the winter and ice skate or ski or whatever. I think it's a much better use of time than staying in and watching video games, actually.
Don, you want to address that? This one here.
Yeah, the project really started a couple years ago when we really struggled to provide ice, not only for the youth hockey teams that practice outside in January when the expo closes down, to get additional ice time. And we just couldn't keep ice in one particular year, and so we started to research what other communities are doing, because obviously with the warm winters we've had in recent years, we found that there are a few cities that have actually gone to the refrigerated ice rinks. If you remember, this, like in years past, has been identified for other funding. We'd simply look for a donor to be able to support this for us. In Minneapolis, Wells Fargo stepped up to the plate and funded the actual outdoor ice skating rink. It's in their downtown, and it's used heavily. And we just like the fact of having a placeholder should we run across a donor that wants to support a project like this.
Further questions? Go ahead, Greg.
Don, how big would this rink be?
What I'd envision is a regulation hockey rink that you could not only play hockey on, but you could also just recreational and skate.
I've been contacted by members of the Hockey League who are encouraging us to move forward because they struggle for ice time everywhere. And I like the project. I grew up at Campus Park ice skating. I had a lot of great times there skating. I think it does keep kids out of trouble if they've got something like this to do other than watch TV and hang out at other places. But I think it seems funny. Here we are in South Dakota with so much cold weather that we need to extend it, but I think this is necessary to keep a quality ice so these kids can skate much longer and get the whole life out of the season. Because all it takes is a warm day and the ice is wrecked and you got to wait. I really like this project. I think we should move forward with it.
And I just might add, too, that obviously it doesn't need to be refrigerated when we do have the cold weather.
Go ahead.
Don, since we're talking so much about the hockey leagues and everything, and this is going to be for recreational use, what are you looking at percentage-wise to be reserved for, like, the hockey leagues and then for recreational use?
You know, I don't know that we've got down that road yet as far as how much open time there would be. My feeling is that there would be some hours available for hockey at designated times and what I would call non-prime time hours, maybe early in the mornings, later in the evenings, but the majority of the time would be available for the general public.
Thank you.
Further questions?
I would just like to make a comment. I've also been contacted by hockey parents, and one of the things that I have a concern about, and I will support the continuation of this project, but the issue is that we have some young children, elementary school age, who are having to go to practice in these hockey association practices at 6 o'clock in the morning, and then going to school, and in some cases even going to practice at 11 o'clock at night because not having facilities. I think it's important for us to provide alternatives, and this would give us an opportunity to do that at a very low cost.
Further comments or questions?
Yeah, Don, I have a question about the funding. You know, my primary concern is that we will not get the total of $829,600 from some donor, and that we will eventually be using tax money. But having said all of that, would you favor if I modified this amendment by just simply saying that no tax money will be used for it?
Yeah, wouldn't bother me.
Okay.
Further questions? Got a motion before us to delete $829,600 out of it.
Mr. Mayor, in response to what I said to Don, I guess I'd like to withdraw that amendment and then...
Substitute motion?
Yes, right.
Substitute motion is what?
I move to amend capital improvement project number 217064, refrigerated outdoor ice system, by adding that no tax money will be used for the project.
Everybody understand the motion? Is there a second to that motion? That motion dies for lack of a second. We're back to the main motion as proposed to delete the $829,600 for the refrigerated outdoor ice system. Further comments?
Well, I guess I'm really now concerned we might actually use taxpayer money in the future without that substitute motion going. So I will vote in favor of this amendment.
Okay. Further comments? All in favor of the motion to delete will vote yes. Those opposed vote no.
Councilmember Jameson?
No.
Knutson?
No.
Litz?
No.
Stagers?
Yes.
Anderson?
No.
Benninga?
No.
Brown?
No.
Costello?
No.
That motion failed, 1 yes and 7 no's. Next.
The next CIP amendment I have is I move to amend Capital Improvement Plan Project number 193064, Zoo Master Plan Improvements, by moving the funds of $3 million for Zoo Master Plan from 2010 to 2011.
Second? That dies for lack of a second. Next.
The next amendment I have is a CIP amendment. It's dealing with something that's the first time ever in the capital improvement program. I move to amend Capital Improvement Plan Project number 019064, Sherman Park Improvements, by deleting $96,000 for the Sherman Park overlook structure.
Second? That dies for lack of a second. Next.
The next amendment I have is a CIP amendment. I move to amend Capital Improvement Plan Project number 189064, River Greenway Improvements, by deleting $2,574,480 for destruction of Old Railroad Bridge and building a new pedestrian bridge, and adding $175,000 for construction of pedestrian bridge over the railroad bridge.
Second?
Second, Anderson.
Seconds, go ahead.
Yeah, this is a bridge that we've talked a lot about here in the City Council. Some people have referred to this bridge as a bridge to nowhere, but we do have an agreement with Sharapa Place that we are to have a pedestrian bridge across the Big Sioux River. So this is to carry out that agreement. But instead of destroying an old railroad bridge, which is a very sturdy structure, this amendment would get rid of the money for destroying the bridge and then building a brand-new pedestrian bridge, and instead add $175,000 to construct a pedestrian bridge over the railroad bridge.
Mike or Don, you want to address it?
Mike Cooper, Planning and Building Services. First of all, this is part of the quality of life bond that the City Council recently approved, which includes the first phase of the River Greenway improvements along the east bank between 6th Street and 8th Street. So we are already moving forward to get the proper permits to undertake that project. The critical part, as we have said many times before to the council and to the public, with this existing railroad bridge, is that right now it acts as an impediment to flooding along the downtown portion of the Greenway. And if we are able to move, in order for us to be able to move forward with the rest of our Greenway improvements, to get the necessary permits through the Corps of Engineers and the Federal Emergency Management Agency, that existing bridge needs to be removed. The level of that bridge is too close to the water elevation. And so the entire concept is to remove that and replace it with a new pedestrian walkway. So unless we do that, we are not going to be able to complete the Greenway improvements as proposed.
Yes. Mike, how old is that railroad bridge?
How old is it?
How old is it, yes.
It dates back to the 1880s. I don't know the exact date.
Yes, and I guess I'm just really questioning the idea that this is going to create more flood problems or whatever, considering it's been around for, well, over 100 years or so.
Yeah, we have photographs, and we've shown that to you before from the 1950s, when that bridge is completely inundated with debris and logs, and it's basically acting as a dam. So it's been documented multiple times over the years, causing major flooding.
How many bridges cross the Big Sioux River? There's a lot of bridges that cross the Big Sioux River that can create that kind of scenario.
But this is the one that impacts the downtown specifically, Councilman Staggers.
We also have a bridge, an old railroad bridge by the parking ramp that's over the Big Sioux River. We converted into a walking bridge, which works beautifully. It's wonderful.
It's a different elevation. It's not the same elevation above the water. So they're all a little different.
Yeah. But once again, I guess I would suggest to my colleagues that, the history, this bridge has been around for a long time, and all of a sudden, we have a Greenway project, and we want to build a new pedestrian bridge, and it's a real major problem. I guess I'm just finding it difficult to accept.
Further comments, Pat?
Mike, I agree with everything you said, but As far as the core goes, my understanding is that the only reason that it's an impediment is because other greenway improvement projects, namely the amphitheater in front of Sharapa Place, is going to build out into the river.
It's not just the amphitheater, but there's a significant portion of the Greenway plan that would be within the flood area.
How much of that?
I don't have the exact percentage tonight to offer that, but
Okay.
it's not just an amphitheater, it's other
But it's that portion in
improvements.
between 6th and 8th Street?
Yes.
On the east side?
Right. We're actually underway right now with a consulting engineer to do a modeling of the improvements to calculate the amount of rise that would create within the downtown river area, and then compare that to what it would be if we removed the bridge. And that's what we need to do to get our permits to move forward with the project. This goes back, probably 5 or 6 years ago when we first started working on the Greenway plan improvements. So this is not a recent discovery that we're just now bringing to the public.
Well, as you know, this particular issue was the single reason that I opposed the quality of life on 2 before. And again, I go back to the 2004 River Greenway plan that specifically calls for that bridge to be converted to a pedestrian bridge.
Right.
And what we're doing now, in essence, has doubled the cost of that project. It took it from a $2.5 million project in last year's CIP to over a $5 million project in this year's CIP. And that's what I really struggle with.
Well, the $5 million is not just for the bridge, it's for the entire project. And when we did the Greenway plan in 2004, we did not have the information from the Corps of Engineers that told us that we were going to have to replace it.
So let me catch what you said a little bit earlier, though, that right now you're doing the modeling?
Yes.
So that we will...
So we can get the permits approved to go ahead with the project as was in the quality of life bond that was passed by the council.
Is there anything, between Director Rowenhorst or yourself or Cotter, is there anything that obligates us to spend that money just because we authorized the quality of life bond too?
There's nothing that would obligate us to necessarily spend that money. However, it would cause some issues with the bonds, with the call protection, that kind of stuff if we didn't.
What kind of issues?
Well, we'd be building up reserves, and we wouldn't be able to pay on, wouldn't be able to call the bonds and get the money out of there.
Further questions? Go ahead.
Mike, question. As Pat stated, in that 2004 River Greenway, was the amphitheater and things like that in that already? Or was these changes that have been made over a few years here?
In the 2004 plan, it was very conceptual, but yes, it had similar proposals that we're looking at now with that first phase. And that was all based on a significant series of public meetings and input from the community of what they would like to see changed within the downtown Greenway.
But I thought that amphitheater wasn't actually placed between 6th and 8th Street originally.
Well, it wasn't exactly the way it looks today, no. But again, that was very preliminary design concepts. But I don't want to walk away tonight giving you the impression that the only reason we have to change the bridge is because of this proposed amphitheater. That's just a very small percentage of the impact. So even if we took that out, we would still basically be required to remove the bridge.
Thank you.
Further questions on the proposed motion? Harold?
Mike, would you refresh us again about the issue that we have with the agreement with the Sharapa Place and the project that we put together a number of years ago as a public-private partnership?
Yeah, we as part of that redevelopment project, there was a commitment made by the city to move forward with that first phase of the Greenway, including providing for a crossing over the Big Sioux River. And I just have to address this bridge to nowhere because that could not be farther from the truth. The Greenway plan provides for significant improvements on both sides of the river, And as we've said, again, publicly many times, we worked out an arrangement with Raven Industries to gift them a portion of abandoned railroad right-of-way on the west side of the river over to 6th Street, which they have invested voluntarily a significant amount of money to make improvements that provide for a public walkway through that area. So there is a reason to connect both sides of the greenway.
And I don't have a question for Director Cooper, but going along with what Councilor Benega just said, I was thinking along the same lines as he was, and I guess, I mean, again, I think the City Council, I think this would be an extremely poor time for the City Council to vote against standing up to legal contracts that we have made. I mean, I can't believe that we are even considering that, to be real honest. I mean, we signed off on that as a legal contract.
And to follow up on what Mike said about it in regards to a bridge to nowhere, you don't have to stand out there very long to see people using that bridge today in a very dangerous situation, people crossing that to get on both sides of the river.
Mike, I love the way that bridge looks. It's pretty cool. Is there any way to elevate that and continue to use it, somehow hoist it on both ends and jack it up and continue to use it? Is there any possibility of that?
We've talked about that in the past, and again, looking at that existing structure, including the abutments that it sits on, it
doesn't match up.
It doesn't work.
Well,
otherwise, we certainly would be looking at doing that.
For me, I think we can't hardly fathom the idea of leaving an obstacle over the river that we know is a potential problem. I mean, I just can't imagine why we would do that, knowing that. If we didn't know any better, I can see it, but knowing that it's a potential problem, it's just got to go.
Further questions? Got the motion before us to delete $2,574,480 for the Texano Bridge and add $175 for the pedestrian bridge. Further comments, Pat?
You know, I don't agree with the comment that it's a bridge to nowhere, because it will be a viable pedestrian walkway, whether this one is converted or the new one is put in. And I guess I still am not convinced that it is entirely inconsistent with the agreement that we have with the Sharapa Place to develop the east side of the River Greenway between 6th and 8th Street in a manner that we do not have to replace that bridge. To me, this is probably the most egregious example of wasteful spending that our city has. I mean, I think we do a tremendous job, and the administration does a tremendous job on a lot of things, but this one single item is $2.5 million that I just can't for the life of me understand why we would consider this at all. It's not about flood control. It's about being able to build into the river, to have to remove those structures below it that support it in order to create more access, I guess, for more ability for water to flow under it. And I just, again, it was the single reason why I oppose the quality of life bonds too, because I just think this is just a terrible waste of taxpayer money.
Regarding Councilor Costello's comments, and I don't think that you were on the City Council at that time. If I recall correctly, I might be wrong on that. But and I don't have the agreement in front of me. I'm sorry about that. But I clearly remember that part of the option with the Sharapa Place people, to have the option on all of that land for a possible downtown event center. That was one of the that was one of the items that we agreed to, and when I say we, the city councilors that were serving at that time, and I think it's possible that Councilor Costello, you were not, elected at that time.
No, you're right. I was not on the council at that time, but again, I'm not opposed to improving the greenway between 6th and 8th on the east side and making those improvements to it. It's just the manner that we are doing it. I just think we should should stay true to the effort that, by and large, I got to believe a lot of people put into this 2004 River Greenway plan and stick to the plan, and I don't think it's necessary.
And again, not arguing with you at all on that. I very much respect your feelings on every issue, but I would just say that I do believe that legal agreements that we make with private entities matter even more than Greenway plans, and I say that very respectfully.
Go ahead.
Yes. Of course, I was around when we did this agreement with Sharapa Place, and since then I've inquired about the legality of the bridge across the river. And my understanding is that if we use the old railroad bridge and put a walking bridge on top of it, we fulfill the agreement. I mean, I'm the last person that wants to break a contract. And we will be fulfilling this contract at a much less cost in comparison to destroying the railroad bridge. We're going to save approximately $2.5 million if we approve this amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I recall as a kid going down and standing on that old 8th Street Bridge, and I thought it was in 1959. I was quite young, but I remember that old 8th Street Bridge was just kind of rocking back and forth. You could feel the vibrations, and there was chunks of ice, large trees, and some other debris, I think that looked like an old roof of someplace, stuck underneath that bridge. And I recall also that spring that the river got so much water underneath it that it got to a certain point and it erupted, and it threw chunks of ice the size of automobiles up on the banks alongside of the Zip feed mills. And I remember that bridge just being an impediment. Now, it's in my lifetime. It's not 100 years. And, with some of the weird weather that we've had here recently, I'm not so sure that it couldn't happen again. And I guess I don't want to take a chance on that. And, in regards to what we know today, we didn't, 2 years ago, we didn't know that we were going to be raising the levees out by the golf course either. And that was as a result of some new information and, quite frankly, some things that were foisted on us by the federal government. But, as time goes on, we just find out different things. I'd like to save the money, too, but I just believe that old bridge down there, I know that old bridge blocks the river when we get a massive amount of water going through that.
Go ahead.
Question for Director Cotter. Mark, you're obviously the most familiar with the Corps of Engineers and our floodplain certification. And I asked you this question the night of the Quality of Life Bond, too. Absent the River Greenway plan, if we were to leave it as is, does that bridge cause us any concern regarding getting floodplain certification by the Corps of Engineers or FEMA?
The levee improvements that are currently planned, I think, is what we talked about that night, Councilor. And not in relation to that. It is directly tied to the River Greenway. But I personally even walked down in that area, and you can see how low the lowest chord of that bridge is. And then based on those historical pictures where the water was up to the top of that bridge, for us to see some proactive development of downtown, I certainly also support the removal.
Okay, let me ask the question again. Does it cause us any concern with the Corps of Engineers or FEMA that we will not get our river or floodplain, or does it cause us any effect in that regards that we will not get certification by the Corps or FEMA?
Not by the Corps, but clearly at any time you do anything near a river, you cannot, what we do, if you were to put a log in the river, what that would essentially do is it would raise the upstream water's elevation. So essentially everything that we're trying to plan down on the River Greenway does some of that. It also takes some other areas out. The hydraulic modelers have said one of the biggest impediments in that river is that structure, and fully recommend it come out.
Okay, so what I heard is that if we leave it alone, we don't have a problem, but if we're going to improve it and impede into the river, we do have a problem.
That's correct.
Mike, go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify, and I should have thought of this before, but when the quality of life bond for this project was approved for $5 million, as part of that cost estimate of $5 million, the estimate to remove the current bridge and replace it with a new bridge is $770,000 of the $5 million. So it's not $2.5 million.
So what is this 2,574,480? What does that represent?
I don't know what that represents.
What does that represent, Counselor?
Well, that represents research done by the City Council's office. That was the number that was given by the administration.
Tom, is that what we had in there?
Mike, what, this quality of life bond was, how much of it was dedicated to the River Greenway?
$5 million, I should say, not $5. $5 million.
$5 million, yeah. And in here, it's roughly $2.6 million.
There's money, are you looking at the 2010 CIP?
Yes.
Yeah, there's also funds in this year's CIP.
So what is it, 2.574,480?
So the total is 5.
Huh? That is that's more than the bridge, isn't it?
Yes.
Does anybody have the answer there, Don? Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, that number appears to represent everything we have in there. We also plan to do some station points and trailway enhancements, smaller type projects, and so that's what that total dollar amount represents. But the bond fund portion is 2.5.
How much?
2.5.
How much for the bridge?
770,000.
That's just for removal, correct?
So this is 2,574,480 for the construction of the bridge. That's not the number then.
That's removal and replacement of the bridge.
The
In the
2.5?
cost estimate.
Removal and replacement.
What's this?
That's what we've been saying. Removal
Then what's
for
the
the
700?
construction and the building of a new pedestrian bridge. That's what we have, $2,574,480.
Tom or Gene, do you guys have it?
I believe the numbers that were picked up probably incorrectly as far as being broken down. There's the bond funds for the construction, $2.1 million. Then there's some other items in here that brings you up to the $2.5 million. So there's a lot of stuff in here besides the bridge. The bridge is the $770,000 out of $2.5 million.
So the bridge is 700 plus thousand out of the 2.5. So
Yeah,
the
the other
2.5,
stuff, this
to
is-
get it right here now, the 2.5 is not just to take the bridge out and build a new pedestrian bridge.
No. It's it's all of the stuff that's done between 6th and 8th.
Okay, everybody understand that then?
Go
ahead.
So, Gene, the quality of life bond, the quality of life 2 bond that we did, this project's portion of it was $5 million.
This project that we're looking at, the numbers you're looking at there is about $2.5 million.
Okay, and then the other 2.5 came from, or where did the $5 million come from?
Quality life
bond. Came out of the quality of life bonds, but be in another section.
The total project for the River Greenway is $5 million, is what the quality life bond. That's the total project of the Phase 1 to do 6th Street to 8th Street. Go ahead.
Yeah, if you remember, we had this conversation a few weeks ago. We already have $2.5 million in 2009 that was previously identified, and now this is the additional $2.5 million that wasn't previously identified when we increased it from 2.5 to 5.
Okay, so the original 2.5 came from what, sales tax presumably, it's a carryover?
Well, if you remember, we adopted the budget with $2.5 million for the River Greenway as part of the quality of life bond. Then we delayed the actual issuance of those bonds until here recently, and at that time we increased it to $2.5 million more. So we hadn't accounted for the additional $2.5 million in 2009, and so we needed to show it in 2010.
question. Probably be for Mike. Is there any other planned additions for that area? Since we have a concentration of bridges over there, 6th and 8th Street, are we going to have to make any changes to those bridges in the future?
On 6th Street and 8th Street?
Between
No.
6th and 8th
No,
Street?
just the railroad bridge.
Okay.
Further comments? So the motion to amend here is for $2,574,480 for the destruction of the railroad bridge, which is actually $700,000. So is that right? Pardon? So you'd have to have a substitute motion, I would think, to bring that number into line, unless you think your number's right.
If I could ask, Mike, you're saying that a new pedestrian bridge is $770,000, right? Just to clarify.
Again, in our estimate, because we haven't gone out for bids yet, so all this is estimates based on our preliminary design, that the amount of the $5 million for the Greenway improvements that are earmarked for the bridge include removal and construction of a new bridge with a total cost estimate of $770,000.
Okay, I guess, just offhand, that's really low. And the reason I say that is because I'm trying to remember the bridge that was built across the interstate to Southeast Tech. I've heard different numbers on that one. I've heard $775,000 to over $1 million to build that bridge, and that's just that's just going across the interstate highway there.
But that was that was a handicap accessible, which you had to really do a lot of different work on that one. That was a lot more complicated than that.
You're right, but we weren't destroying any other bridges either. We were building a brand new one. So I think the $770,000 is ultra low estimate. That when you talk about destruction of that railroad bridge, that's going to be substantially more.
The estimate, and again, these are based on discussions by our design consultants with contractors. The estimate to remove the existing bridge, including the abutments, is about approximately $52,000. Make that about $60,000 of the total, and $712,000 for the new construction. And again, those are estimates based on the span. And
plus the span of the
span.
bridge out there at the tech school was a lot longer than this is ever
That's
going to be.
325 feet long or something like that.
Yeah,
You
it was
have
long.
the elevations to get up there. and it's a
to make it
totally
handicap
different animal.
accessible was really something. So I think that's a hard one to compare. But so do you want to try to amend it then, or what do you want to?
Okay, so Mike, you're saying a good number is $770,000. So
that's what's in the design consultant's cost estimate at this time.
I'll go ahead and then have the substitute motion to have $770,000 for the destruction of the old railroad bridge and building of a new pedestrian bridge.
And what about the 175?
And then adding $175,000 for construction of the pedestrian bridge over the old railroad bridge. Yeah. So I want to keep the old railroad bridge and spend approximately $175,000 for that.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, the motion, everybody understands that motion. I understand. Okay, everybody's got that.
We're just changing one number, actually.
Right.
If I could just...
Yeah.
I'll just say one last comment. Again, I want to emphasize to the council that based on all of our conversations with FEMA, with the Corps of Engineers, with our design consultants, unless we remove and replace that bridge, we're not going to be able to do the Greenway improvements.
Okay.
Can I ask clarification on that?
You certainly may.
My understanding is that we wouldn't be able to complete the Greenway exactly the way we planned it. We would have to modify it. Isn't that a fair statement to make?
By modifying it, basically you're not encroaching into the floodplain area at all.
I mean, still have a Greenway.
Well, you won't have much of a Greenway, no.
Well, then that's...
It'll look very similar to what it does today.
Well, we got the motion to change the $2,574,480 to $770,000, and then leave the $175,000. Is there a second to that motion?
Second, Costello.
Costello seconds. Further comments on that motion? Not all in favor of the substitute motion will vote yes. Those opposed, no.
Councilmembers Jameson,
No.
Knutson,
No.
Litz,
No.
Staggers,
Yes.
Anderson,
No.
Benega,
No.
Brown,
No.
Costello.
Yes.
All members present voted 2 yes and 6 no. That motion has failed. Next.
It gets back to the original motion.
Okay, you're back to the original motion. All in favor of that motion will vote yes. Those opposed, no.
Councilmembers Jameson,
No.
Knutson,
No.
Litz,
No.
Staggers,
Yes.
Anderson,
No.
Benega,
No.
Brown,
No.
Costello.
No.
That motion failed. 1 yes and 7 noes. Next.
Okay, the next amendment I have is another capital improvement program project. I move to amend capital improvement plan project number 044011, City Hall and City Hall Annex improvements by deleting $427,014 for improvements to the City Hall and City Hall Annex.
Second. Dies for lack of a second. Next.
Now, the next amendments I have are dealing with the budget. We're now done with the CIP amendments. And the first amendment that I have for the budget is in regard to the property tax increase, prohibiting it. I move to amend the 2010 general fund revenue budget by deleting $995,366 of property tax increase, 3% CPI adjustment pursuant to SDCL 10-13-35.
Second. Dies for lack of a second. Next.
Another budget amendment. I move to amend the 2010 general fund budget by deleting $370,000 in revenue and deleting $370,000 in expenditures from the engineering department by eliminating the red light cameras.
Second. That dies for lack of a second. Next.
The next amendment I have is a budget amendment. I move to amend the 2010 general fund expenditure and revenue budget by deleting expenses of $10,864 and revenue of $19,800 from the Parks and Recreation Department to eliminate the tree trimming inspection program.
Is there a second? That dies for lack of a second. Next.
Another budget amendment. I move to amend the 2010 general fund expenditure budget by adding $250,000 to allow for the city to maintain trees in the city boulevards.
Second.
Second, Anderson. I'd like to discuss this a little further.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, basically, what this amendment would do would make the city responsible for maintaining its own trees within the city boulevard. Different cities maintain trees in city boulevards different ways. Here in Sioux Falls right now, we make the adjacent property owner responsible for maintaining the city trees in the boulevards. Other cities like Kansas City say no. Adjacent property owners do not touch those city trees in the boulevard. We maintain the trees. We take care of trimming them and so forth. So this would be a change in direction here for the city of Sioux Falls to actually have the city responsible for its own city trees in the city boulevard instead of adjacent property owners.
Questions?
Councilor Staggers, I'd be curious to know how the city of Kansas City pays for their tree policy, trimming policy?
Through taxation. Yeah.
Pardon?
Taxation.
I assume it's a bit higher than the low taxation system we have in our city and state?
I haven't compared the city taxes of Kansas City and Sioux Falls. But during recent years, the city of Sioux Falls is definitely spending more and more money, raising more and more taxes, raising more and more fees. So I'm not sure, where we are in relation to Kansas City. But I remember when I was in Saigon just a few weeks ago, One of the intriguing things I saw in Saigon, Vietnam, is they have all their trees in Saigon numbered, and they monitor those trees and maintain those trees.
This question is for Don or Councilor Staggers as well. The $250,000 is, where does that amount come from? Is that even remotely close, or how do we arrive at that to know that that is even enough to maintain the trees in the bowl?
Well, this $250,000 would be spent next year until the city depleted the funds. It would be kind of like what we have right now. The City of Sioux Falls and its tree inspection program doesn't cover inspecting the entire city every year. It takes sections of the city. And so that's what I would anticipate here, that we would continue taking a look at the trees in different sections of the city and then having the city maintain those.
Go ahead. I would just ask if there's a director out there that has any kind of an idea on what kind of number or how far that would go.
Would the city do that, or would you contract that service out?
Whatever the Parks Department feels would be the most efficient way of doing it.
I have not looked at it, and I didn't know where the number came from either, but my initial reaction is that it's extremely low.
But it would, if I could just ask Don, this would be a good beginning for the city to take on this responsibility, and then maybe in the future actually increase it.
Yeah, I think the challenge that when we've talked about that is not only the manpower but the equipment that goes with it, and they're very expensive vehicles. And editorial comment, I guess, is that 97% of everybody that we send a notice to trims them, and they're pretty accommodating and complying with the ordinance. And so I would say that the program has been very successful, although controversial.
And if I could just ask Don, so we have private citizens that are, have their property adjacent to the city boulevard, actually saving the city tons of money instead of the city taking the responsibility. Is that fair to characterize it that
Well,
way?
I think we have that, with all due respect, I think we have that in several different situations.
Yes, we do.
We mow our own boulevards, we scoop our own sidewalks, which is all in the city right of way as well. And so it's just a policy decision. If you want to change the ordinance, we'll be glad to implement whatever you'd like us to implement.
Further comments? Got a motion before us, been made and seconded to add $250,000 for trees in the boulevards. All in favor of that motion, vote yes. Those opposed, no.
Councilmembers Jamison?
No.
Knudsen? No. Litz?
No.
Staggers?
Yes.
Anderson?
No.
Benega?
No.
Brown?
No.
Costello?
No.
That motion failed. 1 yes and 7 no's. Next.
Okay, the next amendment I have deals with the budget. I move to amend the 2010 general fund expenditure and revenue budget by deleting expenses of $75,000 and revenue of $18,550 from engineering department by eliminating the city sidewalk inspection program.
Second. That dies for lack of a second. Next.
The next amendment deals with an expenditure of $18,000. I move to amend the General 10 General Fund expenditure budget by deleting $18,000 from the Mayor's Department by eliminating the Youth Forum.
Second. Dies for lack of a second. Next.
Budget again, amendment. I move to amend the 2010 General Fund expenditure budget by deleting $35,000 from the Attorney's Department by eliminating the Drive to Arrive Immigrant Drivers Education Program.
Second. Dies for lack of a second. Next.
The next budget amendment is I move to amend the 2010 General Fund expenditure budget by deleting $32,280 from the Human Resources Department by eliminating non-DOT random drug and alcohol testing of city employees.
Second. That dies for lack of a second. Next.
I move to amend the 2010 General Fund Revenue Fund by adding $2,318,580 to the Health Department for Medicaid reimbursement the Health Department receives.
Second. That dies for lack of a second. Next.
Another budget amendment. I move to amend the 2010 general fund expense budget by deleting $33,600 from the Health Department by eliminating homeless advisory board staff joint with Minnehaha County.
Second. That dies for lack of a second. Next.
The next budget amendment, I move to amend the 2010 general fund expenditure budget by deleting $162,182 from the Planning Building Services Department to eliminate the subsidy for downtown Sioux Falls.
Second. Dies for lack of a second. Next.
The next amendment, budget amendment, I move to amend the 2010 general fund expenditure budget by deleting $60,000 from the sanitary landfill department to eliminate the sustainability master plan.
Second. That dies for lack of a second. Next.
Another budget amendment, I move to amend the 2010 general fund expenditure budget by deleting $47,400 from sanitary landfill department to eliminate the pipeline repair and maintenance.
Second. That dies for lack of a second. Next.
The next amendment, it's a budget amendment. I move to amend the 2010 general fund expenditure budget by deleting $6,000 from the sanitary landfill department by eliminating the landfill garbage service.
Second. That dies for lack of a second. Next.
And then the last amendment I have, a budget amendment. I move to amend the 2010 general fund expenditure budget by deleting $150,000 from Planning Building Services Department by eliminating the capital improvement plan project number 112025, Historical Facade Program.
Is there a second? That dies for lack of a second.
Mr. Mayor, those are all the amendments I have for this evening.
Okay, thank you. Next, any other amendments?
I have a couple amendments.
Okay.
And I would ask the indulgence, I've got budget amendment A and B are actually the resolution to approve of the plan and the budget and the plan, and so I would ask that those be read last after all other are considered, because it, by its very nature, passes the plan. So it would be unable to amend it after that. So I would go to my budget amendment C. I have budget amendment C and then D as well. They are, let me read it first. I move to reduce the 2010 mayor's recommended appropriation for the general fund by $1,843,333. The $1,843,333 represents a 4% increase in sales tax from 2009 projected actual receipts to 2010 mayor's recommended budget. The amendment is intended to assume that the sales/use tax receipts will show no increase from 2009 projected to 2010.
That's your motion?
That's my motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Who's second, Bennigan?
Benninger.
Okay. Motion been seconded. Further comments?
If I might, the reason behind the motion to remove this amount from the fund is that we know today, or as of August 31st, that we are 3.6% down in our sales tax receipts. In the 2000 recommended budget, there is a 2% increase, 2% for 2009. So that difference alone, or together, is 5.6. In addition to the 2010 projects a 4% increase, and that takes it to a 9.6 increase from where we are in August 31st, 2009 to where we think we're going to be December 31st, 2010. And I simply believe that a 9.6 or virtually a 10% change in the sales tax is unachievable. When I do budgets for my businesses, one of the most important things is that they need to be realistic and they have to be attainable. And I simply don't believe that this is an attainable number for us in 2010, given what we know today in the middle of September regarding the economy. I certainly make no fault for the administration for putting forth the numbers that they have in the budget. We know that when we pass this resolution and the subsequent appropriation next week, that the next day the administration, the directors will all start working on the 2011 budget. I don't know exactly when you all picked the 4% growth and the 2% for 2009, but I imagine it was back in the earlier part of the year when we were running 1.7% up. And given what economists were saying at the time with the recovery in the fourth quarter of 2010, a 4% increase in 2010 would seem to be a reasonable assumption. But you fast forward to where we are today, and I simply believe that it's an unrealistic, unattainable number. And my goal here is just to make it realistic. I certainly applaud the work that you have done to afford us the opportunity, at least from what Tom Huber has indicated in our last financial update, that we've got a reasonable chance of having a balanced budget for 2009 as far as revenues and expenses equaling each other. You have made admirable goals or achievements in able to cut expenses and save money throughout the year. And I applaud you for that. I think we all do. But this amendment simply brings a more realistic, reasonable approach to the 2010 fiscal year. Otherwise, I don't know why we wouldn't just budget $1 billion and let it come in what it came in. I mean, these numbers are unrealistic. We need to make sure they are realistic, and I think this amendment does it. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Gene, you want to?
Gene Roanhorst, Director of Finance. One of the things that we've tried to do this year, and I think we've been very successful at it, is to try and make sure that the finances of the city operate in an orderly manner and that we don't do anything with a knee-jerk reaction. The numbers that we came up with started with the actual numbers from 08. We started with that number. There was a plan of 6.5% for 09. We reduced that for our calculation purposes for 2010 to 2%. We then went on to 2010 and brought that one down to 4%. And within 2011, we're back up to 6%. These numbers are founded on a sound basis, but it is a plan. And there is one thing that we know about a plan, and that is when the actual numbers come out, they're going to be different. But what you do is you use a plan as a benchmark, it's a stake. You drive in the ground, and then you start managing your process, and you manage against that plan as best you can and take remedial action when you need to. In my opinion, this resolution is premature. We don't have enough information to really say that there's any more quality to the level of 2% or 4% than there is to the 6% or 7%. Doing this thing on a premature basis, I'll back up a little bit. For one thing, the 3.6% does not include about 3 days' worth of sales again from the state, as best we can tell, remitting to us. So the number is not 3.6%. It is something better than that. We don't know how much better. We'll see when we get down through the end of September. We don't have the back-to-school sales in yet, so we don't know what that did or how that turned out. We don't, and then we've got the whole Christmas season coming up, and if you recall, the first large disbursement from the state, which would be in January, about mid-January, gets rolled back to 09. And so in every year we roll that first one back, so we're consistent, saying that part of the sales tax receipts that we get in January are actually accounting for the prior year's sales. So the quality of the number is in our opinion, is a good one. We put a lot of work into this. The directors put a ton of time into it, together with their staffs, to take care of their departments. We all agreed on the budget amounts, and we think that through the process that we used in coming to the conclusions that we did, we got the best possible solution to the issues that we're dealing with. And with all of the minds of all the directors and their staffs put together, we have come up with what we think is the optimum solution to this plan, and is an optimum solution to managing against for 2010. Now, there will be differences, but we will have to deal with those when they show up. We've used our plan in 2009 by doing holdbacks. We would do the same type thing again in 2010. Establish a cushion in there that we can hold on to until we get up to the end of the year and know where the numbers are at. So with that,
if I might, with all due respect, Director Owenhorst, as you know, the numbers that we're using are the numbers that you prepared. Also, as far as timeliness of this, you know that we are required by ordinance to act on the appropriation, or is it the third week in September? So, you know, the timing of the whole issue is not driven by us, it's driven by ordinance. And again, the numbers we're using are the numbers you prepared. I understand there may have been a cutoff issue, but at last month's, at the review of the August or July numbers, I'm certain that it was stated that we have a reasonable chance, maybe 50-50, on balancing the budget this year or coming in line with revenues and expenses. So you can throw out the 3.6 or what we're down and what we're not. I'm going off the assumption that that we're probably going to be close to balance, if not maybe a little bit off, or either way. But then you take a look at what's underlying the assumptions in here is that we have a 2% increase, and then for 2009, which we're thinking is going to be nothing or flat, and then a 4% increase in 2010. So then you take a step back and think, is it reasonable to think that we're going to do 6% in the year 2010? And my opinion is that it's an unrealistic goal. When we follow up a year that we're, you know, in all likelihood will be flat, and in our best years we're running 7 to 8%. So I just respectfully disagree and think that 6% is an unattainable number for us. And keep in mind, I would imagine that if sales tax receipts were suddenly to miraculously turn around in the beginning of 2010, we could always appropriate more money at that time.
well,
And I just had one last comment. I would point out that the back-to-school shoppings from my report has not been spectacular, from what I understand, what I've read, and that Christmas season shopping can hurt us just as much as it could help us.
those possibilities all exist, but all we have to do is manage against that and take our plan, and we will do that. And we will be able to respond in an orderly manner to whatever the outcomes are in the sales tax. If you take out, if the sales numbers come in at the end of September, they very well could be right back to zero to up, and be very well within our 2% that we used to calculate 09. 04, that's out there 18 months yet. Not quite that much, 15 months. But we've still got a trend that it could very easily, it's very logical to take the 4% and then go up to the 6%. But those are why people disagree. We have that's what makes a market. We have a difference of one person says sell and the other one says buy. And we think that we've got an optimum solution here to the plan, and it's one that we should pursue.
And in essence, what you're asking us to do is to appropriate the money and then trust you, versus whether we believe that these are realistic assumptions or on the underlying fundamentals of what our sales tax receipts will be. And I guess that's where it comes down to, and we'll have a vote in a couple of minutes on whether or not there's a reasonable expectation or not. And I personally do not believe it's a reasonable expectation.
If you look at our sales tax numbers and the predictions that we made over the last 10 years, starting in 1998, when you average out the numbers, Our best number for the 10-year period, and this would be for the first penny, and then the property tax, and then the general fund revenues. In the sales tax, we averaged out, we were 0.11% on average over those years difference. In the property taxes, we were 0.35%, and in the general fund revenues, which are a little more volatile, we were just under 2%. So we've got a track record of having a sound method of calculating these numbers, of predicting them. The only real exceptions that are outliers in this and stretches out the standard deviation a little bit is 9/11. We took a nasty hit in 9/11, but we came back from that. And in 2008, we took a nasty hit there. You take those two events out, we have a very good record of predicting what these numbers are going to be.
And I agree 100% with you on that train of thought, that on over 100 scenarios, you're going to be right more than you're wrong. But that's the same logic that brought us to what you had projected for 2009 at a 6.5% growth versus where we're actually, and I know the number's a little soft, but to a negative 3.6. The trick is we know the economy is not hitting on all cylinders. We have those reports every day. We read those. And so what do we do with it today, knowing what we know for our 2010 budget? And I just don't think that looking back over 10 years is necessarily the right approach. I think we have to take into account to what we know today and respond and react. But again, if sales tax if they turn around and we miraculously have a great economy going and our sales tax are higher, can't you just bring us a supplemental to appropriate more money?
Like I say, we think this is the best solution, and this is the one we stand by as far as whether things are changing. We have one of the greatest predictors in the world, and maybe things aren't quite so bad. The stock market is up. The Dow Jones is up 20 to 25 points from a year ago. It takes about a year, about 6 months, at least 6 months, and more often 9 to 12 months, for that to flow through to the rest of the economy. And that's, and you get into 2010, that's about where we're going to be, about a year from the end of that thing. So there are signs. What I would say is we have, at a minimum, the economy has stabilized, and the financial system has stabilized. And any decreases would be, in my prediction, highly unlikely. How much is the increase? That's the question we're talking about. And we think that our solution is probably one of the better solutions as far as predicting what they will be.
And keep in mind that under my amendment, the sales tax would still be growing at 2%, because we're only taking back the 4% for 2010. We're leaving in the 2% for 2009, which is probably unrealistic. So there is still some growth built into that number. It's just the 4% for 2010. And I know you certainly aren't advocating that we base our budget decisions based on what's happening with the stock market.
It's just one indicator of what's going on in the economy.
One indicator.
Yes. And it's one that's got a pretty good track record.
So is last month's sales tax receipts.
Well, I would just like to say that I continue to respect everyone's opinion on these difficult topics. And however, I personally prefer to stay with the budget that is presented to us. I do believe it's premature for us to make these changes at this time. I believe that there are clearly many self-correcting mechanisms in place to take care of any changes that we need to make, because, again, this is merely a very important plan on paper, and that we are in a great position to correct any thing that we need to correct as far as underspending is concerned. I have full confidence that the administration will not spend money that it does not have. That is an understatement, actually. I just don't believe we have to do this in advance. And I guess as far as the supplemental appropriations going forward, I mean, I think that gets to be a little bit, it's doable, but to me it's more difficult. It's a little bit more awkward, a little bit less effective to me, because we I think that if we choose to go down that road, that then we probably, as a council, would not want to appropriate money, or to pass all of those supplemental appropriations till the end of the year, because we wouldn't really know yet then what money we were going to have with. But anyway, so those are my general comments at this time. But I would be, in the over 7 years I've been on city council, a major priority, if not the major priority, of this council and the councilors I served with earlier, is public safety. And I would be interested in hearing from the directors of police department and the fire department, at least as starters, as far as what would the impact be if we were to go down this route for next year's budget.
You're asking for the police and fire?
Yes, and anyone else that applies to public safety. I guess that could be health department also. I mean, that's a safety factor too.
Good evening, Doug Barthel, Police Chief. The proposed amendment suggests that $439,689 would be cut from the current mayor's proposed police budget. Trust me, I struggled with this. That's a chunk of money to come from our budget, and where to take that from is something that I didn't take lightly. I've got a budget that is 87% is wages and benefits, so it's basically people-driven budget. There isn't a lot of room in there with other things to, I can't cut fuel, I can't cut ammunition. Some of those sort of things are a necessity to run our business. So it leaves me with very few options. So the areas that I have designated that if this proposed amendment goes through that I would have to cut from our budget would be totally eliminate the subsidy that we currently have budgeted for Children's Inn, which is $124,240. Also totally eliminate the subsidy that we have for the Compass Center, formerly known as the Rape and Domestic Abuse Center, $22,000. Both are entities that we use considerably. They've been a great resource for us, and it's certainly not an indication that I don't support what they do. The other area would be to reduce our training budget by 43% to cut $70,348 from that. And the last one that I obviously struggled the most with, but would be to actually cut 3 police officer full-time equivalent positions and the equipment associated with those for a total of $223,101. Likely would do that by not filling retirements that we have anticipated coming at the end of the year. The downside with that is when we applied for our COPS grant, which, as you might recall, we were awarded 9 officers through that grant for $1.9 million. When we went through the grant application, we indicated that we had 221 sworn officers. For us now to go down to 218, we would be unable to hire, at the very least, 3 additional officers through that COPS grant, because then we would basically be supplanting. We can't cut the positions and backfill them with federal money that way, because that grant was to initially designed to replace officers that were either laid off or to add to your department. So the net loss would be a total of 6 officers, because I'd have to cut the 3 now, plus I wouldn't be able to add the 3. And that's given that we can actually even do that. I'm not sure if we'd have to check with the feds to see if it's even permissible to do a partial reduction of the grant, if they'd allow us to even go down to just 6, or if it was a all or nothing deal. So I'm not sure if that would jeopardize the entire grant or not.
If I might, and all due respect to all the directors and the mayor, but twice I sat in your office, Mayor Munson, and asked you for help in coming up with reasonable allocations on these cuts. And twice you said no. It is some ploy to bring up the fire chief and the police chief to come up and say that all these bad things are going to happen to our city. When I asked you for help, there's no reason that we pass the recommended, make the amendment tonight that we can't go back and reallocate these resources down the road.
And I told you when you asked me, Pat, I said, this is our budget, we submitted it, it's in your hands now, you make the decision,
Right.
and we're responding to what you have made,
Right.
and I think we have every right to ask every director what impact it has on them.
And that's fine. And we can hear how the world's going to come to an end tonight. But the reality is that these monies can be moved around at a later date. And it's not the intention to take this out of, to have public safety in our community suffer.
Well,
This was merely just an allocation across the board amongst departments.
When do we balance the budget then?
Well,
balance the
whenever
budget.
your administration wants to get engaged on coming up with reasonable cuts, this is what, I had asked twice for this.
I said I don't have any cuts.
Well,
I said, Pat, we put a budget together, Gene talked about it, we used the best number we had to provide services so that we wouldn't have to do what we're talking about tonight. Now, I told you that we have turned it over to the council, and it's in the council's hand to make the decisions. So we're just responding. In fact, we got the amendments very late, and these people had to go to work on it, and this is where we're coming out, and we want people to know, if we're going to make this decision, we want to know. I don't want somebody to come back later and we say, well, we didn't know that. And that's all I'm asking. Questions of Doug?
I'll ask one to break the ice. I know that sooner or later you're going to be asked where you would come up with this money. I guess the mayor can ask you to do it later. We can ask you right here and now. But sooner or later you're going to have to come up with some cuts. Am I wrong on that? I don't think I'm wrong on that. And I think sooner or later, it's going to come out to where those cuts go, whether it's in your department or in others. Somebody's going to bear the brunt. I think we're talking about $1.8 million overall, over a 122 million operating budget. Somebody's going to get the axe. I don't know who it is. We can decide it tonight, maybe, or let the mayor decide it. But I guess the burden's been put on us to decide it. And I guess, I don't know of a better way, but I think we've got some struggles here amongst us that are going to boil over here tonight, but maybe we have to get through this. But I am not at all in favor of you losing $400,000 and cutting all that you're cutting. That is not in the best interest of Sioux Falls. So, Mayor, City Council, do not cut his budget.
If I might, the 1.8 accounts for 1.5% of the general fund. So 1.5. That's what we're looking for in a tightening of the belts in the city hall, is 1.5% of the general fund. We're not asking, and I wouldn't expect for a minute that these would be the final budgets for next year. That I would imagine we would come back and take a hard look at all the areas and figure out where it's going to come. I'm just curious, if our sales tax don't materialize, is it easier to cut when we're in a hole? Does it get easier when we're behind?
Gene, do you want to explain that and talk? Because it is, Pat, if you have the 4%, then you go ahead with it, and then as you can drop. But here you've got to make the decision of sight, because you've got to balance what we're doing with revenue with expenses, and that's what we're talking about. I mean, we're not. I'm not trying to play games with anybody. I'm just telling you that, we were asked, your amendment told us that you wanted these areas cut. And that's what we're responding to. We're responding to your amendment that you have tonight. And so to do that, all the people had to look at their budgets, because this is what was asked out of each budget. And now you can't come and say, well, we'll make the decision later, because we have to start balancing.
One of the main areas that's been talked about getting the money is the leftover, or the turnbacks, as they're referred to, in the funds, and that will not work. You will not achieve your goal by trying to take those out, and here's the reason why. Those in the last few years, we have ratcheted down very tightly, and the directors have all worked together hand in hand to tighten our budget up as much as we possibly can. And the turnbacks have diminished somewhat, but the amount that we've missed the year-end budget by has been diminished dramatically. We were very much tighter in handling that process. The way it'll work, if we take those turnbacks out, the department heads will simply make the choice that, well, I'm going to have to move everything back one step. And by that, what I mean is they're not going to give up that turnback, because that is the safety margin that they have so that they do not overrun their funds and overrun the appropriations. And so you would gain virtually nothing in terms of actually freeing up some money that can be used to apply in here. And for that reason, the thing, it just doesn't work, and it's not going to get you where you want to go.
I couldn't agree with you more. We need to find some real cuts.
Go ahead.
I was just going to mention the example of this year. We started off with a 6.5% projected growth, and now we're flat.
Negative 3.6.
And you guys have done a lot of things to get us informed about this lack of funding, essentially. I mean, here's a textbook example of how we've overcome a misprojection. And I guess, how do you see it happening if we're at 4 and we wind up at 2? The same information that you would be sending us. I mean, I guess we've been through this before. I'm not thinking that there's an impending doom if we miss the mark again.
I don't think there's any impending doom for us, and I don't want us to see any, and that's why we don't want any knee-jerk reactions. We want to deal with these things against a plan that is rational and achievable, and we take corrective actions when we don't meet the plan results. That's the key. You want to keep this thing in an orderly manner. It could get rough later on. Okay, if it does, we'll have to react to that. And when you talk some more about the turnbacks and the staffing, when you look at something like police, the chief can't wait until the end of the year, this year, to hire those people. He's going to have to hire them up in the front end of the year and front end load them, and then you would be looking at cuts, possibly later on in the year. So what you're not achieving your goal, and your department can't react by saying, we'll bring it in later. We don't know.
But you have to make the decisions now. If you take it down from 4 to 0,
Exactly.
you've got to make those cuts.
You're forcing that decision down now.
You got it.
To drop those 3 police officers or those 6.
Or whatever department it is. I mean,
Yeah,
because
whatever.
everyone was asked to delete or to reduce their budget by X amount, and so they all had to do that. You know, but you have to make that decision now. You can't say we'll wait until the end of the year or to do it or next year, because once you take it out, then if it's zero, Pat, you come in, and even if you come in July, you come in 6%. You can't make a decision because you don't know what's going to happen to the end of the year. So that's all we're looking at, and we're trying to, be responsible, but we're trying to provide the services, and that's what we want everybody to know.
Well, I would propose that if the amendment passes, if it should pass, that we go to work tomorrow and try to really figure out how we're going to better allocate that 1.83 cut. And it may not be perfect now. It was strictly proportionate to the size of the budget. There was no magic in it. It was strictly proportionate across the board is how it was allocated. And, the real thing, what we're trying to do here today, or with this amendment, is protect the unreserved fund balance. Because in your presentation, you showed us a graph of what's going to happen. And here we are at the star, and we dip below in 2012 or 2013. And that's assuming for 2013, well, you're going a 6% increase in 2013. And that may be achievable, but you've got your 6% already, where you've got your 4% in 10 and 2% in 9. And we know at the end of August we're 3.6 negative. So what happens if we don't have that? And what happens to this graph down the road if we don't hit these attained numbers? It starts getting deeper and deeper, and that's the concern. That's the concern, that we don't use up such a large portion of our unreserved fund balance in 1 year.
We have close to, I want to say somewhere in the area of $12 million. It's over our 25% range. We're looking at using $5.2 million of that this year in unobligated fund balance.
Right.
That we'll use against that.
You're right.
As this thing moves, there are some assumptions on those charts. One of which the turnbacks are already included in there, so you wouldn't gain anything. You can't take them out and take them out of that chart. They're already included in there. But that's the whole point of it. We've looked ahead. We're looking out there 5 years, 10 years, and if we can stay on the chart, we'll work our plan. If the sales tax does not come back, then we've got some issues to work on. But we have got the cushion to do the work and to do this thing in an orderly manner. And we wouldn't want to get in a situation where we have to be laying people off or anything of that nature. We want to be able to, like I say, to do this in an orderly manner. And we can't do it if we box ourselves in.
Yeah, and of course we know that there's a structural deficit of $5.3 million already built into the 2010 numbers. And then if we don't achieve our sales tax growth, that's roughly another $2 million on top of that. So you're pushing $7 to $8 million of our $42 million reserve, of which some 15 to 20 we need for cash flow. I mean, that's the concern, and that we have a prolonged economy. I think it's better for us to focus on how we're going to budget reasonable for 2010 today than try to react down the road.
We think we've done that.
And at the end of 9, we have to come in with a balanced budget anyway.
Yeah.
We don't have a choice. We flat don't have a choice. It's 4% in 10. We don't have a choice but to balance the budget. We've got to balance it. That's just the thing we have to do. So it's incumbent. I mean, when you approve it at 4% or whatever, it's going to be our responsibility to manage it within that parameters of what we have, and that's the difference. But if you're going to go with 0, you do have to look at cutting down. I mean, there's just no other choice we have. I wish there was, but there really isn't. And that's why when we put 4%, I mean, they looked at a lot of data and made that decision based upon the services we could provide to citizens without having a lot of impact, and we felt very strongly we could manage to that. And that's kind of where we came from on that. Go ahead.
I guess another comment that I meant to make is just the flexibility part, is that I do believe that approving the budget as it is now provides a great deal of flexibility, particularly to the next administration. And I do continue to believe that budgets are merely plans, but in the over 7 years I've been on City Council, we have had some rough times, but we've not struggled to meet those difficult situations because we sometimes just wouldn't fill positions that were empty. We just kept, cutting back on this or that where we had to. And yet, we got through those times, those difficult times, in good shape, actually, very good shape. But again, I believe that the budget as it is now provides great flexibility, which I believe in.
Further questions? Anybody?
Just as a point of reference, too, I will not be bringing forth the other budget amendment, which was, I think, D. It essentially took the same number out of the capital program. And that might seem as a little bit of an inconsistency. Why adjust the general fund program and not the capital program? Well, the capital program, we can only spend what we get in, and that's going to be, I believe, is going to be forced on the administration by the economy, and they're going to have to go back and make those reprioritize those projects and figure which ones are going to get done and which ones are going to get bumped out, or delayed to next year. So that's the reason behind that. We're only focused here on the general fund and making sure that we preserve the unreserved fund balance to make sure that it has enough to get us through these times. And it's a 1.5% is what we're asking for, 1.5%.
But the general fund is going to do the same thing. I mean, we got to manage within the numbers we have. We can't overshoot the runway on that.
Right, but you're planning on using 5.3 as
we've already got that in the budget.
Yeah,
I mean, that's in there right now, and that's that's something that is there. So with the 4%,
Right, and then, and then if we don't get you're right, yeah, with the 4%, if we don't get the 4%, that's a couple $1 million more, and at some point it becomes.
What, a couple, you mean we're going to have to use the reserve?
If you.
We'd have to come back to you to do that. We can't just use reserve, can we, without coming back to them, Gene? No. We can't come back, we got to come back to you.
It doesn't matter whether you can come back or not. It's about having a realistic goal, about having a reasonable budget and what we think our
Then
goal
what I
for
want you to
growth
understand, and so we're all on the same page, all the council members on the same page, because this is where we're at, I want everybody to understand, so nobody come to me later and say, we didn't know that when we started seeing what's happening. So we've got the directors, we've worked on this because this is what we were asked to do now. I want the council to understand, we were asked to do this because to come in at a zero is going to affect every department we have. And so that's why, the ones that are going to get first responders, public works, libraries are going to have, and that's why I want everybody to understand. So, if we're willing to, if the council's okay, let's bring some people up and tell what they're going to do. So, Don, you want to come ahead? I just want people to know it so they can't come back and say, I didn't understand it. I want everybody to know what they're voting on.
Don Hill, Fire Chief. Our amount was $320,000 roughly, and similar to police, who is 87% personnel costs, we're 89% personnel costs. So it would be difficult to make those cuts without affecting personnel. So preliminarily, we have identified about $50,000 to take out of repair and maintenance, and also to cut our training budget by 12.5%, and then the rest, $260,000, would come out of personnel costs.
Questions? Where's Mark?
Good evening, Council. Mark Cotter with the Office of Public Works. We also looked at what the impact would be to Public Works. The reduction in budget is about $333,973. Engineering, Public Works Administration, and Streets are the three entities inside of Highways and Streets. Engineering in our office are largely like public safety, where we're heavy on people. And so we do have outside programs in engineering that we've identified for this year's holds, and we'll also carry forward with those for this year as well. The first one would be corridor studies. We look at access management, grade lines, trying to set and get out with development. They may be an environmental assessment for 57th Street, updating the interchange justification report for Minnesota Avenue and 229. Those are two key ones that are in front of us that would be impacted. That would be about $76,000 of the fund. Our dollars, we also have GIS in our office. And one of the keys as you manage your GIS and also federal mandates that come down, you have to ongoingly assess and capture your city assets. One of the opportunities that we do here is we actually bring on part-time staff. We would not be bringing on a part-time staff. For the GIS team, we're also going to cut our office's training budgets to meet our targets of about $11,000. And then last, streets. Streets, as you know, we have really two key areas. We have street maintenance. We also have snow removal, which is highly seasonal, highly weather dependent. But on the street side, we look at right now, we actually currently sweep the streets 4 times in the city. We'd go back to 3 times. We'll actually reduce the crack seal program by about $23,000. And we were fortunate last year that we only activated the contractors to help us plow the streets 3 times. For 2010, we budgeted 4 events. And so with this new target of trying to find about $246,000 inside the streets, we've rolled that back to 2009 numbers, which would be about $100,000. So that makes up the $333,000 proposed cuts for Public Works.
Question to Don. Don Carney, you want to just...
Yeah, our number's about $219,000. Unlike police and fire, we're have a little more flexibility because we have a lot of project and maintenance programs that we can work with to try to come up with some of those reductions. Primarily, we'd probably look at slowing the initiative for the identification of areas where we're out of compliance with the ADA bike trail areas underneath the bridges and those types of things where we have grade changes that we'd like to upgrade so that the entire bike trail system is compliant. We'd also reduce the amount of sidewalks that we repair out in our park system as well as the zoo. We looked at some door replacements that we've had on at Frank Olson Pool and out at Great Bear that we'd like to see replaced. We've got diving tower replacement at Spellerberg that we would defer. Hopefully that will make it through until we could get it to if Spellerberg makes the final cut for the CIP in the future for replacement. And so those are generally where we would anticipate we would come up with those cuts.
Questions? Sal, do you want to talk about yours?
Sally Felix, Siouxland Libraries. Our reduction amounts to $103,000, which probably doesn't sound like a lot, but it is very important to us. I think one of the major things that we'll see is that we're going to have a further delay in some of our infrastructure and maintenance needs at the city branches, particularly the Cayley branch and Ronning branch. You all have heard my dog and pony show about how busy we are at Cayley. Well, it takes its toll on the building as well. It's going to be 22 years old in 2010, and I was just out there recently, and it's definitely showing its age. We had planned to do some things this year, which we're not able to do, and so it's just going to be further compounded. I guess my worry about the infrastructure and the branches and our buildings is that I don't want them looking like the main library looked when I first came here. We also would be cutting training budget, probably basically eliminating any kind of conference attendance and training, and ours is well under $10,000. It's not a huge amount of money. We would be looking at not buying additional bandwidth, and actually we really do need to do that because of the heavy use we have of our computer services, and all of us know how the increased space we need on the computers for people to download things as they get more and more memory hogs. We also would be looking at reducing some of our program support for both our children's program and our adult programs.
Questions? We've got others. I don't know if you want to hear them or not. If you have any questions, the other departments, go ahead.
Maybe I could try to summarize this issue, and maybe you guys can help me understand it if I don't have it right. But I think aren't we really talking about a little bit of control here? I think Pat brings up some good arguments, but I think in the end, I know we've got another amendment that's pretty similar to this, and I hope we don't have to go through all this again. But if I understand it right, it's all about keeping a plan, and if we don't have the money come in, we're just going to trim it back to the point where we can't afford what we have in. Now, we could trim back and start with zero, and if we get extra money in, we just add little things here and there. Am I right on that? No?
You're talking about sales tax?
If we started at that there's not going to be any growth, we're going to start at zero.
Right, start with zero.
Through 2010, extra revenue starts flowing in, we're up 3%. Who decides? You have to now come together and think of something to spend that money on.
But you're talking about if it comes at 3%, let's just say June, July time frame. But we won't know until December 31st what the sales tax came in at, because it could be there, and if it comes in at less, we can't do anything until after the fact, because to live within where we're at, unless you really come for, suppose you come for something. Well, I don't even know if you can you, Gene? Because you've got to live within that budget.
I'm not sure what your question is right now.
Well, if you start with zero, and,
Yep.
and let's say to 10 it's zero, and you get into June, July, and it comes in at 4 or 5%, and then start adding, to try to add some stuff back, you don't know in December until you get to December what your sales tax is going to be.
Well, that's true. The sales
That's
tax,
your problem.
because of the seasonality of sales tax, you don't know until the end of the year.
And so you can't make assumptions based on when you get the first 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 months.
That's the whole point
That's-
that I was making. A lot of things that we do, particularly out of the CIP, that stuff is all started in the spring, and it has to be in order to get it done. You start it in the fall, you got another whole ballgame that you're playing with.
But if you start with a 4 and you can work your way, I mean, if it doesn't, you can manage, and that's what the directors are paid to do, is to manage within, to make sure
Exactly.
that budget falls where it's supposed to fall, and they'll do it in 9. And I'm comfortable with that.
If I might, zero is really 2% because you're planning on 2% growth in 2009, and that's not likely to happen. Second of all, you also have planned use of $5.3 million of the unreserved fund unreserved fund balance. If revenues start to come in ahead of what we are anticipating, we will use less of our unreserved fund balance.
You can't, we can't do that without appropriations.
But you're getting...
We can, the only way you can use unobligated fund balance is if revenue doesn't come in, we can use unobligated fund balance to keep us whole. But we cannot, on the other side of the transaction, expend money over what the appropriations are.
I understand, but the appropriation, doesn't that include $5.3 million of unreserved fund balance?
Well, I'm talking about any appropriations, you know,
But that does.
if you're looking at a
It does.
particular department.
But the
I don't
5.2,
care if the revenue doubles in that department, they can't spend it without an appropriation.
but the 5.2 is figured in the 10 budget.
Yes.
Yeah. And we can't, that's all, I mean, we can't go and say, well, we need another $1 million, because we can't do that.
I think from a practical matter, though, I mean, if sales tax were coming in ahead of what was anticipated, don't you think the council would be willing to appropriate that money?
But how do you know until the end of the year?
Well, that's
I mean,
the
that's just like
crux.
saying now.
That's
That's
the
like saying
crux.
now where we're at now. Can you tell me exactly what will be at the end of the year?
No.
We think we'll be at 2%.
And we probably have had this debate long enough. It's probably time to vote. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's really about whether or not the city is going to go through the same fundamental principles that every family in this community is going through. It's how to allocate our precious resources. And I'm just asking for us to reprioritize and come up with 1.5% savings out of the general fund.
We will be very prudent with what we spend. We have been. Since I've been here, we've been very prudent. The directors have worked very, very hard to squeeze that thing down and operate very efficiently, and they will continue to do so. And if things are not going the way we need them to, the directors will take the right action, the corrective action necessary to keep that thing, to keep the unobligated fund balance in an appropriate level. And that's what we got to have the flexibility for that Commissioner Knudsen talked about. You know, we have to be able to be a little bit flexible. And the more you clamp that down, the worse it is that as far as being able to respond when we need to respond.
Nothing I said tonight should any indication that I don't believe that all the directors haven't been frugal and been very steadfast in coming up with those to date through the 2009. It's all about realistic budgets for 2009.
But we haven't raised anybody's taxes. We're collecting the same penny. We're collecting the same penny, the first 2 pennies, and we're using those wisely. And we're going to have to work within that 4% parameter. It's not like we're raising taxes to make that work. I mean, it's within the same number, and it's just who thinks the numbers are going to come in at what. I mean, that's where you're at. Go ahead.
If I could respectfully disagree, yeah, we do plan to raise property taxes by
That's
$1 million.
property taxes.
That's right. Those are taxes that are taken from people. They could be using it to spend themselves instead of the City of Sioux Falls. I mean, you know, what we have here for next year is a budget increase in the general fund by 4%.
Tell me this. So tell me what sales tax we're increasing on this, the first penny and the second penny. Tell me what we're increasing. Property taxes, you had a chance to vote on it. The council voted on that. and it didn't fly. So, but tell me tell me what we're raising on the sales tax besides the penny that we've always raised for years and years, and the second penny is a full penny now. Tell me what the property tax. What you're saying, the council had a chance to weigh in on that one.
Oh, that's right. They're going to have another opportunity next week, too, to weigh in on the property tax
That's the choice.
issue. Because, it's kind of, it's not the city is not setting a good example for the citizens of Sioux Falls. I mean, we literally have citizens in Sioux Falls who are losing jobs. And we also have citizens in Sioux Falls who are having their wages reduced. And what is the city doing? It's setting a poor example by raising the general fund by 4% in spending. And at the same time, it just so happens we're going to have a 4% projected 4% increase in sales tax.
Where did we raise the sales tax 4%?
Your projection for revenue.
Revenue 4%.
Yes, that's right.
But
Yes.
what if we don't meet that goal? We have to live within it, and we have to go to whatever the number is.
So the thing is, we
but
should be
didn't
more
go out and
prudent.
raise anyone's taxes on this first or second penny. That's what I'm saying. You can talk property tax. You're right on that
Yes.
one. But I'm talking about the sales tax now.
Yeah, we're talking about the projected 4% increase in sales tax for next year. That's what the budget.
4% sales tax, but you're still paying the 1%.
It just happens to correspond with the 4% increase in the general fund. I mean,
You're talking
you can-
property
you can
tax now.
conclude
You're talking
how-
property tax.
We're
Yeah.
also talking about the general fund, including property tax, too. But the thing is, we're increasing spending in the general fund. We're not having spending the same as last year. And citizens are wondering, now look, if we are, losing our jobs, we're having a reduction in our salaries, and the city is out there increasing the general fund by 4%.
So tell me this, besides your property tax, that we are increasing spending in the sales tax. It's 4% we're increasing, but we're still collecting the 1%. We're going to collect the 1%. And we are not we're not raising that sales tax. Your property tax was voted on here.
We were raising the sales tax. I don't think anybody said we were raising
No,
the
but
sales
then
tax.
you talk about this 4%.
Nobody has.
This 4%.
I mean, we raised the sales tax when it
We're living
effect
within the
is January
operating budget
1st.
without going besides your property tax, and everybody had a chance to weigh in on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just saying, we're not setting a good example. We're projected to spending more money in the general fund next year in 2010 than we are in 29. And now we have different department heads getting before the city council and saying, we just can't live with the 2009 budget. We need to have this increase for next year in the general fund. I would suggest that this is a very reasonable amendment, just simply saying, hey, we're going to live within our means, we're going to spend the same amount of money as we did in 2009. I think that's a very reasonable thing to do.
And so now tell me this, how's that saving the taxpayers money?
Well, what we're doing here is we are skeptical about the numbers for the increase in revenue. That's what it boils down to. We want to be very prudent.
So we are. But tell me how we're raising taxes.
Well, we're raising the property taxes.
You're raising
by
the property
$1 million.
tax. I'll give you that one.
Yes,
And
that's
you
right.
had a chance on
And
that
that's
one.
not appropriate to do either, because here, once again, we're having some citizens on fixed incomes who are out there trying to make it, and here we are, during this downturn in the economy, they're living on fixed incomes, raising the property taxes. That is a
Well, you're
poor
talking
political
property
message
taxes,
to
and that's what
send.
you voted on. You had a chance to talk on
And
that
we'll
issue.
do it again next Monday.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
but that's it, besides that one, so, okay. What other questions anybody have? You want to address the council, come up and give your name.
Name is Mark Weber. I'm afraid I have to say a few things about this local economy. Mr. Rowenhorst, month by month, gets these information from the Department of Revenue and Regulation, and there is a municipal tax due for returns filed that is by a month-by-month basis, not for two consecutive months. He has come up here and said, well, the state cut off the date early so we don't get the numbers. According to this municipal tax due for returns filed January 2009 versus 2008, through the first 8 months of this year, the municipal sales tax is down 1.7%. That's through 8 months. I'm quite surprised that it isn't more, because the 4% sales tax that comes from Sioux Falls, it takes some research to do this, that the Department of Revenue and Regulation always also publishes, is down by a greater amount. I think what's more appropriate is to look at gross sales. Gross sales in Sioux Falls has been a negative number since November of 2008. This last month, August of 2009, and you compare that to the equivalent month of the previous year, and we're talking about not only retail trade, which is over 60% of the local economy, but also the categories of, this is all one category, agriculture, forestry, fishing, construction, manufacturing, transportation, public utilities, wholesale trade, retail trade, which I mentioned, finance, insurance, and real estate, which is all one category, services, and then a total. For this last month, August 2009 to August 2008 is a minus 17%. July, minus 13.7%. June, minus 13.7%. May, minus 16.4%. April, minus 13.7%. March, minus 15.2%. And then we get to the better numbers, which is more than 6 months ago. February, minus 8.7%. January, minus 8.3%. December, minus 0.5%. In November, we get to a positive number of last year, which is almost a year ago, 1.4%. I think Mr. Costello's numbers, as far as what he's proposing, is the appropriate thing to do.
Mr. Weber, if I might, you've been attending the council meetings and informational meetings for months now, or most of them anyways. Would you mind sharing with us what you do for a living?
I do property maintenance. This has been an interest to me for quite a while. I have a master's degree in economics. I've been concentrating on the labor market and sales tax. For your information, I suspect that we have a negative out-migration in Sioux Falls at the present time. And I also think that based upon conversations that I've had with commercial real estate firms, that our office vacancy rate is still increasing. Our vacancy rate in rental property is, well, it's a little bit overstated from the Multiple Housing Association. It is double what it was in a year's time. Right now, other than what I've seen in school district growth in kindergarten population in the Sioux Falls School District, I'm not seeing too many positive indicators. But I will also say I subscribe to moody'seconomy.com, and I can't remember the 4 economic indicators, but they are suggesting that Rapid City Standard Metropolitan Statistical Area is going to pull out of the recession before Sioux Falls, of the 2 SMSAs that are in South Dakota.
What would be your educated expectations for 2010?
I'm not in the forecasting business at all, and I don't think it's worthwhile even discussing it. But I don't think a historical growth of 6 or 7%, even though you've got historical data for that. It's my impression that we're going to be an outlier. It's not going to be conforming to previous historical data, but I don't know because the one thing that some national economists are worried about right now is commercial real estate loan failures, and you're just starting to see regional and small banks going belly up.
Further questions? Thank you. Any others? Got a motion before us to show no increase for 2009, projected 2010 in, that's, Pat, that's for both the general and the CIP, right?
No,
Or is that
this one is
this
strictly
one
the
we're on is
general.
just the operating?
And I do not intend to bring the other one.
So the CIP would stay at 4, and this was just 0. Okay, that's okay. Everybody understand that one? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I would just try to clarify this a little bit, that this amendment that's being presented here is, well, it's going to roughly allow the city to spend a little bit more than they spent this year, 2009. And so, during these economic times, I think this is a good message to be sending to the citizens of Sioux Falls, that we're not out there spending a lot of money at a time when the citizenry is having a difficult time. So I think that's the best way to maybe look at this amendment.
Further comments?
Yeah, I guess I'm probably getting a little bit tired, but I would just say, the mayor gave his budget speech weeks ago, and during that time, up to tonight, I heard from merely 2 friends, actually good friends, a comment about the budget. I've heard from no one else, so I don't know. I check my email more often than I should, and my phone lines all the time, and I don't know. I'm not hearing from any other citizens except those 2 good friends. So I don't know. I predict the sun will rise whatever we decide to do on this. But again, a budget is merely a plan, an important plan, but merely a plan.
Further comments? Go ahead.
Let's see if I get this straight. As I understand it, you can only spend what you collect. Is that right? But you've got some that you can spend from the unreserved fund. You've already decided to do that. Okay, we've got that clear. I guess from my perception, I'm looking at the administration came up with a plan. Essentially, they've made their bed. They're going to have to sleep in it. They've got to figure it out. I guess I've got a little trouble casting my confidence in somebody's opinion or feeling versus a staff whose job is to get this right and to work these numbers out. I don't know if 4% is obtainable, but as a matter of principle, I've got to support the staff that's been hired to do this. I guess if we don't, and we start taking our own guesses into a number like this, in fact, it's almost like we're just splitting a little bit of hairs here, 1.8 million. I think it's almost a matter of principle of who gets to pick the number more than the amount, and that's unfortunate. But I think we've got to trust our finance department. If we don't trust them with this prediction, I think there's all kinds of other things that we should be doubting about their abilities. And I'm not there yet. I haven't seen enough of an issue where I can doubt what they do. I think they do a fine job, and I respect their estimates and their opinions. I really think we need to let them fix the problem later if it becomes a problem.
Further comments? We've got a motion before us, been made and seconded. So all in favor of the motion to amend will vote yes. Those opposed, no.
Councilmembers Jamison?
No.
Knutson?
No.
Litz?
No.
Stagers?
Yes.
Anderson?
No.
Benninga?
Yes.
Brown?
No.
Costello?
Yes.
That motion failed. 3 yes and 5 no. So what other amendments do we have?
Have one, are you going to be bringing yours?
Yes.
Okay. Is it all right if we wait for that last one until the end? It is actually the passing of it, so it needs to be the last.
Should I go ahead with this one? Mr. Mayor?
Okay, go ahead.
I move to reduce the 2010 mayor's recommended appropriation for the general fund by $1,838,814 from $122,863,782 to $121,024,968. The amendment proposes that first penny sales tax receipts in 2009 will increase by 1% from 2008 actual, and 2010 first penny sales tax receipts will increase 1% from 2009 receipts.
Is there a second?
In the interest of letting democracy flourish, I will be seconding this motion.
Okay. Go ahead.
Well, I don't think this is going to take a lot of time, but this is really a new way of making our budget predictions for Sioux Falls. Mayor, I recognize that it's a Herculean task to put this budget together, and I respect what you're trying to do, and you know I'm always a solid backer behind public safety. Councilor Costello, I commend you because I do share your similar concerns for where we're going to be at in terms of the growth. I think it is a little too optimistic. But I want to rise above, with all due respect to accountants, above the bean counter talk. In my opinion, we're basing projections on projections. Saying next year will be 4% over this year's 2% growth, but that 2% growth is not going to happen. That makes us making projections on top of projections. We're not going to get there. We need to build our financial house not on sand but on a rock. And by doing that, we need to look at 2008 actual numbers for first penny sales tax. And then even at 1% growth on top of that is optimistic, but I think possible. And then 1% above that number for the 2010 budget. So that's what this is supposed to do. And I think it's a reasonable, rational approach. It's used by other cities successfully. And it's just a different philosophy of making those kind of budget projections. In the business I work in, we like to budget revenues low and expenses high and have the pleasant surprise at the end of the year. I think that this delivers that same kind of approach.
Further questions?
Well, I will support the amendment. I would note that it's a $4,500 difference in between our two amendments, but obviously if I supported mine, it only makes common sense to support Councilor Brown's as well. So.
And I'll say the same thing. It's going to have the same impact on the directors that we had, so that's just so everybody knows that's where we're coming from. So, further comments? Not all in favor of Brown amendment will vote yes. Those opposed, no.
Council members Jamison?
No.
Knutson?
No.
Litz?
No.
Staggers?
Yes.
Anderson?
No.
Benninga?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Costello?
Yes.
Munson, no. That motion failed. What else we got?
Councilor Anderson, are you?
I am going to withdraw my amendment.
Okay.
Okay, but you want to just talk what we're going to do on that? So that,
Sure. The need for affordable housing in Sioux Falls is discussed annually.
I'm just giving him the privilege of the floor because he's not going to print it. So I'm just going to give you the privilege of the floor so you can talk about this program.
Thank you. Once again, the need for affordable housing in Sioux Falls is discussed annually, and every year the need for affordable housing goes largely unmet. With the average cost of a new home in Sioux Falls starting well above the grasp of the working poor, the ability for these families to relocate into permanent homes is almost an impossibility. I feel it's time to put our feet forward and go forward with our good intentions. Basically, what we would like to do is put an amendment together, working with the mayor and his staff, to fund a feasibility study for affordable housing in Sioux Falls. That would be the first step. From there, using the feasibility study, working with the council and the mayor and his staff, looking at different options to create affordable housing in Sioux Falls. But this needs to be more than just a city project. We are looking for private partners through the banks, the hospitals, any developers, or anyone who has an ideal about affordable housing. I ask you to please contact myself or our council staff and make them aware of any options that you may have for us. And I hope to be bringing that together and proposing that to the council in early October. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, as a special privilege we offered.
I'd just like to comment on that, because I want to congratulate Kenny for putting this together. He's worked with a number of us, and this is a project that's important. Although many of us come from different philosophies on this issue, it's been the most fun issue I've worked on City Council in 5 years because of people coming from different perspectives on this. And Kenny has been the glue that has held that together, and I appreciate his efforts in doing that, because every agency in town, I see Shireen Ranshaw here, who has 3,300 families waiting for affordable housing in Sioux Falls. Every agency is seeing those kind of increases, so this is an important issue that we all need to pay attention to.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I just have to add that because of the article that was in today's Argus Leader, I had received a phone call from a landowner who wanted to be a part of this program. And I think we'll probably find others who have a little excess inventory all over town and maybe would want to participate. So I think there's just a great opportunity here for citizens to get involved, developers, and I really do want to commend Kenny as well. He's put the legs underneath this effort. I probably would have bailed out earlier, but Kenny kept it going. So I keep it up, Kenny.
Thank you. Others on that issue, that was special privilege. But is there any other motions to amend?
I have one more,
Okay.
final one. I move that the mayor's 2010 budget and 2010 through 2014 capital program as amended by the City Council, with the understanding that should sales tax revenues continue to fall short of budgeted expectation, the administration will present the council with updated contingency plans at the end of each quarter in 2010 pursuant to City Charter Section 5.07C.
Is there a second?
Second, Anderson.
Anderson seconds. Okay, go ahead, Pat.
Boy, I think it's pretty self-explanatory, just essentially asking for a quarterly update if our sales tax should fall short of what our budget is.
Any other comments on that?
Just a question. Councilor Costello, will you help me remember, what am I missing here? Because I feel like we get very, very detailed budget updates every month. And so, we always know from the capital improvement schedule what's been spent and what hasn't been spent, and, what's in progress and what's not. So what else would this entail that we're not getting right now that I'm not remembering?
I imagine it would provide us with more information than what we're already getting. And this language, this very language, came from Director Rowenhorst. So.
Okay.
So we, it's fine, because we want to keep you updated, and so it's appropriate. Go ahead.
I just see that it says here at the end of each quarter, would you expect them to have those reports done at the end of the quarter, or would you give them, how would you?
I imagine that it would be a part of the, maybe a further explanation as part of the monthly financials.
I'm just wondering if our timeline is right, though, for the quarterly reports.
Well, I'll ask Gene. I don't, that's not my, I'll ask Gene.
Oh.
Go ahead, Gene.
What we would do is on a calendar quarter, March, June, and September, we would report those to you in the April cycle. When we do the April first quarter, would be do the April monthly review. We'd include it in there because it takes us about 3 weeks to pull all the numbers together. Then anyhow.
So you wouldn't.
So the first quarter would actually be reported at the informational meeting at the end, towards the end of April.
Do we need those dates here?
Say what?
Just asking if we needed those detailed dates included in this resolution. If we don't, I guess.
Doesn't hurt.
Quarters are generally accepted. I would think
So calendar quarters.
Yeah.
You want to do that. Further comments? This one, I think, it makes us report, which is fine. I don't have this. If further comments, I've got a motion made, second to approve the resolution for the reports. All in favor of that motion, vote yes. Those opposed, no.
Council members Jameson,
Yes.
Knutson,
Yes.
Litz,
Yes.
Staggers,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Benninga,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Costello.
Yes.
That motion prevailed. Now is there any other motions that comes before us? We're all done? Yep.
Just one final comment before we have the vote on the budget. And my final comment is that this budget plan, with increased general fund spending, is not setting a good example for the people of Sioux Falls, many of whom are suffering with the economic downturn.
Okay, we've got a motion been made and seconded to approve the resolution adopting the budget. Further comments on that motion made by Costello and Jamison? All in favor, vote yes. Those opposed, no.
Councilmembers Jamison?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Litz?
Yes.
Staggers?
No.
Anderson?
Yes.
Benega?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Costello?
Yes.
That motion has been approved, 7 yes, 1 no. We're done. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I so move Knutson.
Is there a second?
Second, Costello.
Costello. All in favor, vote yes. Those opposed, no.
Councilmembers Jamison?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Litz?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Benega?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Costello?
Yes.
I think that late, I just feel like I ran the whole time. I know when you sit back. Wow.